Theater is a form of connection and communication, all centered around the art of collaboration. From the community playhouse and educational institution to the many regional theaters, on Broadway and in the corporate entertainment world, including cruise ships and industrial events, collaboration is at the heart of every show, every production. Collaboration is the blending of art and science, of creativity and the production process. It is the dance that happens when artists, technicians, designers, producers, musicians, marketers, and a wide variety of passionate individuals bring their talents together to develop a singular experience. Projects with Jason is one such collaboration seeking to inspire, educate, connect, and entertain through a series of unique, multifaceted experiences which seek to explore the wonderful spirit that is generated when professionals of all backgrounds and experiences intersect with rising theater students and educators, bringing together working professionals and talented students in a crucible of collaboration that happens when you put people together in a room and charge them to create something. The results are very special. This series of works is designed to enrich and inspire students, educators, artists, and all others as we look to connect, be entertained, and grow as artists and human beings.
I'm Jason Daunter. Join me in the Projects with Jason team as we welcome a man whose pen has helped define the pulse of a nation. He is a playwright and an Academy Award Winning Screenwriter and a huge theater nerd, just like all of us. Aaron Sorkin joins us. We will be taking questions from you, the audience, and we'll be joined by educators and students from across the country for this one-on-one chat with a man who's given voice to iconic moments on stage and screen. Let's do this. Artists in Conversation.
It's not going to be a very good show tonight. And I think you should change the channel.
What the
Change
hell?
the channel.
When did they put this
Go ahead, right now.
Does anybody know what the hell's going on?
No, I know it seems like this is supposed to be funny, but tomorrow you're going to find out it's not. And by that time, I'll have been fired. No, this is not... This is not a sketch.
This is real.
You want to go to BTR?
This show used to be cutting-edge political and social satire, but it's gotten lobotomized by a candy-ass broadcast network hell-bent on doing absolutely nothing that might just challenge their audience.
I totally disagree. It is going to be a great day. I'm Jason Daunter. This is Artists in Conversation, and just that little taste of what we are in store for today. The buzz has been going on for weeks once I knew that our guest today had been confirmed from educators, from students, from people across the country who have such a love for this man and his work. So I am thrilled you all are here at Artists in Conversation, the show that gets us up close and personal with artists in one-on-one dialogues where we talk about the things you don't know. You get to ask your questions. So if you got questions, comments, some loves from Mr. Sorkin today, put them in the comments or right over there, and you may show up on the show. Also, take a second right at the top that if you're new to Project with Jason, go ahead and follow us right now on YouTube. Hit that button, don't wait, and ring the bell. You can also catch us on all social media at Projects with Jason, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Yeah, TikTok too. So anyway, we're going to launch right in because there's a lot to cover today. Because we have Aaron Sorkin with us and that clip, you better buckle up because it means we're going to do a lot of fast intellectual talking. And I should be probably walking while I'm doing this and talking at the same time and doing a traveling shot. I always say that I work with people that are smarter than me, and today is no exception. I am the dumbest person here. I can keep up with Mr. Sorkin's stuff, but we've got some students and some teachers on the show today do their questions. I was like, boy, I'm just going to stay out of this. I'll introduce the two of you and you all can just have at it. There is such a love for him. My personal connection to him is that I got to spend just about 2 years in a room between workshops and performances of To Kill a Mockingbird on Broadway, Aaron's return to the great Broadway. And it was amazing. And again, I think I've said with some of our other guests, and he's no exception, that it's the human being that I got to know. Yes, there's of course the artist and this entity that everybody knows, but it was the human being I got to know that just we would talk about theater. And we would talk about, he wanted to know how many cues were in the show and what was it like calling it, and would sit with me in tech and like want to know the whole inner workings of it. And so it was just like one of those, you guys, like everybody started where we started. You know, everybody started with this love. So let's get right to it because I know everybody wants to hear from him more than they want to hear from me. Please welcome my friend, the legend, Aaron Sorkin. Yes.
Hey, Jason, it's great to be here with you. Thanks for that wonderful introduction, too.
Thank you. Let's launch right into Scarsdale High School. Mm-hmm. And I think I actually found, I'm sure you remember this, but I think I found a picture on the internet of you in high school. There it is. Look at that.
Oh boy.
Look at that. So what was it like growing up in New York? Do you remember the first Broadway show you saw? Do you remember like the first theater you ever saw?
Well, the first Broadway show I saw, actually saw from backstage. Because when I was just 5 years old, my family was living in the city. And I was friends with the daughter of Herschel Bernardi, who had just taken over for Zero Mostel and Fiddler on the Roof. And it was a Sunday, and a bunch of us had a play date. And there was some kind of babysitter emergency. For some reason, we just all were parked backstage at the Imperial Theater. And for my friend, for Herschel Bernardi's kid, it was no big deal. She was used to that. But I didn't know what I was looking at. I was watching a man in profile sing Miracle of Miracles to an audience I couldn't see, but I was mesmerized by it. And then a short while later, my parents took me to see my first Broadway show, sitting in the audience, watching it the regular way. And it was Man of La Mancha. And I still have a distinct memory of first kind of seeing the top of a bassoon peeking out of the orchestra pit. Sure. And I got the chills because I realized, I don't know, that this was live. There was something that I'd never seen before or heard before was about to happen. Then that incredible overture, and then the scariest staircase in all of theater came down. That was the ball game. This is what I was going to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I think I told you when we were singing the Schubert, but mine is that it was the dust particles that followed a spotlight down to a conductor in black tie. Mm-hmm. Who would raise a baton. I remember in St. Louis, the Fox Theater, like watching that and being like just mesmerized by where that light came from. And somebody raised this baton and like commanded this orchestra pit that then, the curtain would fly out. And shows don't do the overtures anymore, which is fine. The Hamiltons, the Evan Hansons, they've changed it. But there's something about those overtures that took you into that world, right?
I agree. And, it's funny you mentioned that because Bart Scher, mm-hmm. Very well. He and I are going to be doing Camelot.
What?
Yeah, 2 years from this spring.
Are you allowed to say that yet? Are we like?
I hope so. I mean, it's real. I think maybe I just made news, but yeah, I'm gonna write a new book for Camelot, and we're gonna do it at the Beaumont. And I sure hope we do the overture. Yeah. Bart has been good about keeping the overtures, and with South Pacific, I don't know if you remember.
I do.
The orchestra came up from the pit. He wanted to show everybody. There are like 35 players here, and we're really playing this overture.
I am thrilled. I think we may have broken news. I'm all about it, but it totally makes sense. We're gonna keep the Mockingbird talk till the end because, of course, we're gonna get there. We're gonna take the journey because that was. So obviously you were performing in high school. You played some iconic roles. Do you remember, like, when you went to audition for college, do you remember, like, your audition pieces? Do you remember what song you used or monologue you used?
You would think that I would, wouldn't you? Because I auditioned for 3 schools. I auditioned for Syracuse University, for Carnegie Mellon, and for the Boston Conservatory of Music. Those were the three schools at the time, the only three schools where you could get a BFA in musical theater.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to do. And I auditioned for those three schools. And yeah, you needed a ballad, an up-tempo, and a monologue. And I now can't remember what I did. Damn it.
But you played in high school. You did My Fair Lady in high school, right?
Yeah, I was Freddie. I was the vice president of our high school drama club. I did all the shows. We had a summer community theater that I was heavily involved in. I would take after my parents moved out of the city up to Scarsdale, a suburb of New York. I'd take the train in every weekend, take classes at Circle in the Square. I just wanted to be in theaters.
Yeah. Were you writing in high school at all? When did the writing start? No.
In high school and in college, I had never written for pleasure. Writing for me was a chore to be gotten through for a school assignment. And it wasn't actually until the very last day of college, when annually with the Syracuse Drama Department, there's sort of there's a big party to celebrate the seniors at the end. The party begins with a show that includes sketches about the faculty, and then there's a big party after. And it was my job to write those sketches. And at the party after, one of my professors, who'd been teaching me acting for 4 years, came up to me and said, listen, I think you could do this professionally. I had no idea what he was talking about. Like, go from school to school writing sketches about their teachers? Well, I'm an actor. And it wouldn't be until about a year later, I'd graduated. I'd moved to New York. I had 9 different survival jobs, bartending, working at the TKTS booth, dressing up as a moose in Times Square and passing out leaflets, anything that paid minimum wage that would help pay the rent, and the phone bill that month. And one weekend, I was subletting a tiny studio apartment, like the size of a closet. I was babysitting my friend's grandfather's semi-automatic typewriter. It was electric keys with a manual return. And I didn't have, it was a Friday night. It was one of those Friday nights in New York where you feel like everybody's been invited to a party that you haven't been invited to. The TV in the apartment wasn't working. The stereo wasn't working. The only thing that was working was this typewriter. I didn't have $3 in my pocket. The only thing I could do on this Friday night was take a piece of paper, stick it in this typewriter. And for the first time, other than writing this sketch in college, I started writing for fun and it was dialogue. And I stayed up all night, and I feel like that night's never ended. I just suddenly felt, even though it was brand new to me, I just suddenly felt a confidence with it that I'd never felt with acting, and I was a pretty cocky actor. Yeah. It turned out that all those years when my friends were learning how to act, when my friends at Circle in the Square and Syracuse and everybody, they were learning how to act, it was all going into a different part of my brain, and I was just learning what a play was.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's the journey about that story is what means so much to people on this show, is that we're hearing so much about, the stuff that people don't get to talk about. It's what was that passion and that fire inside you that got you to where you are today, because that's what you in those hard times, you always come back to whatever that initial moment was.
Sure.
And continue to
listen. There was and still is an enormous passion inside of me to, I love doing plays and being a part of it. So much so, my main survival job when I came to New York was actually bartending in Broadway theaters, and I felt like doing that. I felt like I was part of it somehow. When I was working at Brighton Beach Memoirs, I felt like I was part of it. And as it happened, I wrote, you work the walk-in from half hour to curtain, and then you work intermission, and you have most of the first act off. And I wrote most of A Few Good Men on cocktail napkins at the Palace Theater during the first act of La Cage aux Folles.
Come on. That's just like...
It was time well used.
This is what we got to do. A friend of yours was on our show 2 weeks ago, Jeff Daniels.
JD.
And he reached out to me right before the show today and said to please tell you he misses saying your words so much. And he also wants you to know that the state of Michigan that he lives in, apparently everyone's immortal. That's just what I wanted to pass on to you, but apparently they all feel they're immortal. Let's look at an iconic, we've used that word a lot, an iconic clip of a collaboration of your and Mr. Daniels, along with Mr. Rudin, who did To Kill a Mockingbird, on a famous clip from the newsroom.
There is absolutely no evidence to support the statement that we're the greatest country in the world. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, number 4 in labor force, and number 4 in exports. We lead the world in only 3 categories: number of incarcerated citizens per capita, number of adults who believe angels are real, and defense spending, where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies. Now, none of this is the fault of a 20-year-old college student, but you nonetheless are, without a doubt, a member of the worst generation ever. So when you ask what makes us the greatest country in the world, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Yosemite?
How good is Jack?
Pretty straightforward. I have to ask, and I don't want to assume, but like when you hear characters that you've written speak about things that are important to them, is the assumption that things are also important to the writer, or does it get convoluted? I mean, sometimes you would assume that, right? There are issues that are the writer is speaking through the character.
Yes, it's a mistake often made that I'm writing a character as a stand-in for me, and I'm just using them as kind of a delivery system for what I think, which isn't true. I don't think you can't handle the truth. That was a scene actually about a guy that was the first scene in the newsroom. That was the cold open. He's on a panel at Northwestern, and he gets asked sort of one dumb question too many, and he snaps. That was a scene about a guy having a nervous breakdown. He's hallucinating. We don't see it in that clip, but he's hallucinating that his ex-girlfriend is in the audience. That wasn't me doing a rant about America. That was a newscaster having a nervous breakdown and saying the quiet part out loud.
Yes, it's deeper than that. There's a subtext to it, and because theater was such a big part of who you were, but you've crossed all mediums between TV, film, theater. Does the stage guide everything else? For each of them, like when you look at a project, does it guide what medium you're working for, or is the stage always there?
If I have even sort of the vaguest shard of an idea, I first try to think if there's a way it can be a play.
Sure.
If there's a way it can be a play, that's what I'm going to do. I love movies and television, and I love that I get a chance to do them. And there are things that you can do in movies that you can't do on stage. There are stories that you can tell on television that you can't tell, in a longer form in a movie, in a feature-length movie or a play. But basically, I'm a playwright faking my way through movies and episodes of television. Most of what I write is people talking in rooms.
But that's real life. I mean, that's how things go down, right? And obviously, people are very.
Well, whether it is or it isn't, they say when you buy a new puppy, when you're bringing a new puppy home, you should get a crate that's just big enough for the puppy to be able to turn around, but no bigger, because they like the security. It makes them feel safe when they've got those 4 walls. I'm exactly the same way. For some reason, I need scenes to take place in rooms where there are 4 walls. Once I'm outside, once it becomes more of a visual medium, I have trouble.
I think that's amazing. As we get one of our first guests, a student who I was amazed by when I got to meet him. There's something fascinating to the fact that The West Wing ran for 7 seasons. It ended 14 years ago, and you haven't written for it more than 17 years. But yet it's still this thing. I mean, we were doing a poll of everybody that works on Project with Jason as to how many times they've seen it, like from start to finish, and obviously who stopped at certain seasons and who went on. Like, I didn't find it till probably 6 years ago, but watched it in one sitting over like 2 months. And our next student who's going to come on and talk with you, this is why he wanted to be on this show. He found The West Wing. He's obsessed with it. So it's finding a whole new generation. I see you shaking your head. Like, what does that mean?
No, I'm shaking my head. It's the fact that The West Wing listen, it was enough of a joy and a privilege to have done it from 1999 to 2003 when I did it, and then the show went on for another 3 seasons. Enough of a joy for 10 lifetimes.
Yeah.
The fact that it's had a life afterward because of Netflix and DVDs, the fact that I'm about to speak to somebody who wasn't born when the show went on the air, but who has seen the show, it's hard to describe what that does for me.
I can imagine. Well, let's get him in here so we can make it even harder for you to describe what he's about to probably share with you. Krish, come on in and introduce yourself to Mr. Sorkin. Tell him who you are, where you're from.
Hi.
Hi.
You're at Jesuit High School in Portland, Oregon. And I'm a huge fan of your work. When I discovered The West Wing like a year and a half ago, since then I've watched Newsroom, Sports Night, and a lot of your movies. And I just...
Oh, God, Chris, thank you so much. I really appreciate that, man. I hope you're holding up okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
I wanted to ask you about kind of like one of the bigger themes behind your work. So your characters often are very idealistic and they have very, very ambitious missions that they're trying to achieve. What's the kind of inspiration or motivation behind the quixotism or idealism of your work?
Well, listen, you've used all of the adjectives that I use in conversations like this. I write very romantically and idealistically. The protagonists that I write are quixotic, to be sure. And, you know, it's just, I think that you might need a team of like Viennese psychiatrists to figure out how I got to this point, but it's just the way that I like writing. I like writing heroes who don't wear capes. And I think that you can lift an audience up a little bit by giving them. Sorry, sometimes it takes me 100 words to answer a question. I could probably answer in 10, but bear with me. I remember once watching a soccer game with my father. I'm a big sports fan. He was not at all a sports fan. This is a long time ago, and Pele was playing his first game in the United States. It was the newly formed North American Soccer League, which doesn't exist. And Pele, the greatest soccer player, perhaps the greatest athlete ever, was playing in this game for the New Jersey Generals. And it was a boring soccer game. We were well into the second half. There was no score when suddenly, out of nowhere, somebody rockets a pass across midfield, and sure enough, Pele jumps in the air, turns over 180 degrees, whack, upside down, sends the ball into the corner of the net like it was a guided missile. And everybody went crazy, and I looked over at my father, not at all a sports fan, and he was crying. His eyes were wet. And I said, Dad, what's going on? And he just said, I didn't know we could do that. Pele had just lifted everybody up by just kind of showing human potential. And, I was a little kid when that happened, but I liked that. The idea that you can show the possibilities for greatness, for human greatness, not superhuman greatness, for greatness in an ordinary person, if you're willing to sometimes risk or even sacrifice things like popularity. That I didn't answer your question. All I did was really expand on it. I made your question longer is all I did.
And everyone is hanging on every word you're using, let's be clear. Krish, you got another one I know. Go ahead.
Yeah, so your writing style is also really unique. You have kind of very rhythmic, rapid-fire dialogue is what you're known for. And it's almost musical. So I was wondering, is there any actor that you've worked with who stood out as being able to hear the music when they pick up your script?
Well, yeah, first of all, you're right. What the words sound like, what the lines sound like, what a scene sounds like is every bit as important to me as what the words mean. You work with an actor like Jeff Daniels, who I've worked with now 3 times. Mockingbird being the most recent. And he'll know if we're in rehearsal, if we're doing a movie, if we're shooting an episode of The West Wing, he'll be the one to go to the script supervisor and said, I dropped a syllable in there. I'm saying something that's supposed to be 2 syllables, but I'm using 1 syllable. He'll know that he left a beat out of the measure. But in addition to Jeff, this is just one of the many ways I consider myself the luckiest guy in the world. I've worked with incredible actors. The entire cast of The West Wing, somehow, pretty quickly, we all learned how to do the show, and we enjoyed getting good at doing it. But so the answer to your question is, yes, I want the dialogue to be musical. There is a rhythm to it. Doesn't mean that I want to sacrifice honesty for the music. You can have both. And yes, I've worked with a number of great musicians.
I mean, I want to get dishy and be like, who can't do the Aaron Sorkin music? But I know we're not going to talk about that on this show. So, I mean, there's going to be some names out there that weren't able to master it.
Maybe 1 or 2, but by and large, I've been incredibly lucky. Incredibly lucky.
Yeah, and it's also like there's sort of like it's as you're looking at clips and stuff like the Sorkin repertory. I mean, there's an homage to kind of that sometimes when you sort of see players that are on other projects doing other things, because we all want to work with people we enjoy working with, right? I mean, that's part of it.
If you're a writer and you find someone you love working with because they're great, and it's somebody you really want to spend a long day and a long night in a trench with the stakes so high, you both care so much. When you find that actor, you want to handcuff them and never let them out of your sight.
Yeah.
David Mamet, there are 10 actors David Mamet works with over and over.
Totally true, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Krish, thank you so much for representing students.
Thanks very much, Chris.
I dig it. I thought it was just great when you were presented that you had such a love for this, and you did a great job today. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
Speaking of education, you've been a real champion for education. You were very kind back in the fall for a benefit for the Educational Theater Association for that. And you also have had characters and dialogue that has really supported education through the years. Let's take a look at a moment from The West Wing.
Hey, Mallory. Education is the silver bullet. Education is everything. We don't need little changes. We need gigantic, monumental changes. Schools should be palaces. The competition for the best teachers should be fierce. They should be making 6-figure salaries. Schools should be incredibly expensive for government and absolutely free of charge to its citizens, just like national defense. That's my position.
Work.
Okay. And I will say, I'll cop to this. There was a moment where Sam was delivering
So there was a moment where he was delivering a thought for Mr. I mean, isn't it true?
My beliefs and Sam Seaborn's beliefs happened to overlap at that moment.
But isn't it true? I remember there was a day in the rehearsal room that, Bart we were very much about the rules we were setting up within our world of To Kill a Mockingbird, right? Mm-hmm. We were making our own rules and what those rules were going to be about. And then it was like, there are rules until we decide to break them, but we can do it because we've set them, right? Isn't there that like kind of double edge?
Yeah, listen. The laws of drama are interesting, and To Kill a Mockingbird was very tricky in terms of the rules because we have adults playing children talking to an audience that's sitting at the Schubert Theater. But I could defend the rules for you if I need to.
Well, that means they were set up to be rules. We have some educators that are joining us from across the country that we're super excited. We're going to go all the way to Hawaii first with Rob Duval. Rob Duval, come in and talk to us.
Aloha.
Aloha, Rob.
This is so cool. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. How are you holding up in Hawaii?
We're doing pretty well. It's paradise all the time here. So
you're going to be... isolated. Holy cow!
Yeah, right.
The lottery, man.
Hard to complain. Yeah. But my question is about my daughter who just graduated from film school, and she and all of her friends, they're go-getters. She's a producer, and she's all set to work, and there's no work. So, do you have any advice on how to keep her motivated and how to keep the creative juices flowing during this?
Sure. First of all, I will tell you that my daughter just finished her first year at NYU Film School.
Nice.
Of course, like everybody else, she finished it online, remotely, beginning in March. And yours just graduated, did you say?
2 weeks ago. She got
2 weeks
done.
ago. Okay, well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. I think that it's not an exaggeration to say that she is graduating at the worst possible moment
Right.
that one could graduate into the professional artist community. Okay. But it is temporary. The toughest thing, I don't want to scare Jason. Maybe we'll comfort each other when this whole thing is over. The toughest thing will be bringing Broadway back. Broadway will come back, New York will come back, and it will be led by the lights of Broadway theaters. But the tricky thing about Broadway is it can't fully come back until tourism fully comes back. And New York's #1 tourist attraction is Broadway. Right. So who goes first? I just hope that there are some smart people in a room somewhere figuring out exactly how Broadway comes back. As far as film and television production, I am much more bullish on that right now. That's going to come back sooner. We are figuring out ways to do things. Obviously, we want to get people back into movie theaters as soon as it's safe to do it. But I think that your daughter, who you described as a go-getter,
totally
is going to be just fine. I know because I was there that she wanted to, the day after graduation, get an internship somewhere. She wanted to start, looking for a job and doing the things that you do when you're a young artist. And she's just going to have to kind of be buffering for a while. It doesn't sound to me like she needs any extra motivation. Show her movies.
Yeah.
Watch movies.
Yeah.
Okay. And this will be over, I promise.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob Duval.
All right, thank you.
What you're doing out there for those students. We appreciate it. I think that's, it's hard right now. And I think we're seeing so many people, this project is an example, are diving into we've got to find a way to still connect and create. And I think we have gotten to find moments with people on this show that we're getting these one-on-ones with you that we wouldn't have gotten at the 92nd Street Y. There are some positives that have come out of it. It's not great, let's be clear. But
I assure you I'm getting more from it than you all are. I really love talking to you. And Jason, I hope you don't mind if I just take a half a minute out to ask you, when we all turn the lights off on March 13th, you were running West Side Story, were you not?
I actually moved out to California before that.
Okay.
But, I was out here in California. I just moved out here. So it was, the whole transition had happened here. And I think we also too, that was 9 weeks ago now. And it was it felt like it was going to be 2 weeks. We were like, okay, it'll be a 2 week.
That's what we thought too. And then we knew we were giving out dates for the sake of morale, but it was going to be a longer. But listen, Mockingbird is one of the lucky ones. Mockingbird will come back fine. The shows that were in previews, the shows that had just opened a week before, the shows that were supposed to open in the spring. Tracy Letts had a new play. We're never going to see it. These things are just heartbreaking. And again, as a guy who used to barely pay his rent bartending in Broadway theaters, what about the ticket takers, the ushers, the janitorial staff? This is thousands of people just got the floor pulled out from under them in the theater. On top of, obviously, and everywhere else too. On top of that, Jason, it turns out that people who work in theaters were testing positive at a higher rate than the national average. And anybody who's worked in a theater, it's not a surprise why, right? You're crammed into small dressing rooms backstage, small wing space. You go out on stage, you're sweating under hot lights, shouting at each other, dancing with each other, singing at each other. And then the show's over and everybody really enjoys shaking hands with audience members at the stage door. So just us, we could have spread the entire pandemic.
Yeah. It's, and also too, like, I think too, the reach of, I think about our friends too at the regional theaters. Like, I mean, just these, you know, but it's yeah, there are going to be shows that will come back and we're gonna have to reinvent. And I think also too, as I watch the debates that are happening amongst the various unions, and I'm a union member, and, you know, but it's like, we're gonna all have to come to the table and have a dialogue about where we can give and take, which is also part of the problem with what's going on in the bigger picture is we can't have dialogue with each other anymore. No one can agree on things they disagree on, and we could go down a whole, you know, rabbit hole with that too. But we're gonna all have to figure this out.
There's no such thing as disagreement. It's just you're an enemy or an ally, and we're a lot better than that. B, we won't succeed that way. So we need more Jasons.
We need more Aaron. Stop it. I did tell the story, and I will go ahead and shamelessly share it, that, you know, you get a lot of great opening night notes through the years, but when you get one to post to the company that's from Aaron Sorkin, and then you get like a handwritten note that says, you know, about what you did, and then also in your note to the company, you says, "There's nothing greater than Jason calling a 5-minute call." And it was just that moment. You love being a part of it, and that's what I think is just so amazing to me, was that you would ask things about how many light cues are there going to be, what does this button do, like, you know.
I love being a part of it. I do. I'm blown away by what a production stage manager, by what a PSM has to do, by their responsibilities, and by how good a job you did. People need to understand it's two areas. You have to get the play to opening night, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to, in our case, it was 3 labs that we did with a few months off in between, and then 6 weeks of rehearsal, 6 weeks of previews. Once you get to opening night, it's not like a movie. With a movie after opening night, there's just a projectionist who flicks a switch. And when I say we, I mean Jason and Jason's team have to do the show every night. And I believe it was in excess of 400 cues that you recall.
Yes, you are correct.
And the success or failure of the show was every bit as dependent on your performance on a Thursday night as it was Jeff's or Celia's or anyone else's.
Yeah, you know, and I do respect you saying that, because I think it goes back to that word that we throw around a lot, that people think, oh, but it's collaboration. Everybody that worked in that building, from the prop guy to our front of house team, and you just mentioned all of them too, like our friends who are concessionaires and stuff. I mean, everyone cared so much about the piece that we were sharing, and that we were telling, that it was like you brought your A game every night. We had that cast for a year. I mean, from November to November. I mean, that was there.
And if you can create the right spirit in the room, and you were such a big part of creating that spirit, you can get people who want to stay for a year. You can get ushers and bartenders who understand that the show doesn't begin when the curtain goes up. It begins when somebody walks into the theater. They're beginning their evening. They're in our hands on now. So be nice to them when you're taking them to the scene. Let's do this right.
We can just call the show Two Passionate Guys, because I mean, you're getting let's get to another teacher before the love fest between us just keeps going. We're going to go to Oregon now to a wonderful educator who talk about passion and support for students. Betsy Bishop, come talk to us.
Hi. Oh, this is so much fun.
Hi, Betsy.
I'm a big fan, and I'm glad that you love theater, Aaron.
I
saw For the Mockingbird, and it was phenomenal and beautiful. And I love what you said, that you're a playwright faking their way through film and TV. I love that.
I am.
That's perfect. My question for you is, you know, we try to get kids to write, and, you know, as English, humanities, and theater teachers, we're trying to develop strong writers in every field. But of course, I want it to be in the arts, because it influences everybody everywhere.
Yeah.
How do you think high school educators can best encourage young writers?
That's a great question. Because, listen, I got lucky. I just, for some crazy reason, this Friday night with my friend's grandfather's typewriter. Otherwise, I never would have known that writing was something that I would enjoy. Like I said, that wasn't necessarily a chore to be gotten through for a class. So, on the one hand, I think it is very important to teach kids how to write a proper essay, right? With a hypothesis and facts. I think teaching grammar is important. But then there's got to be some kind of I don't want to call it freestyle.
Yeah.
There's got to be some kind of free play time where you're not going to be corrected on any rules at all here. Express yourself. Write a story about what just happened in gym class. Okay? And then, okay, this is a cool story. Take this story now, and instead of description and rumination, you and the bully in class, write you guys talking to each other. Okay, disagree about something. Just have them disagree about something. People disagree about something, and write, and just do it in whatever voice you want. Don't try to please me.
Excellent.
No, I'm saying this. I'm not a professional educator, and so I hope somewhere there is a professional educator. So, it's a terrible idea. The goal is a good one, but there's a better way to get there.
No. Well, high school and college change all of us in some ways, but Scarsdale High School and Syracuse University. What were some experiences there that influenced your writing?
Okay, well, I can tell you that with high school, I keep saying how I never wrote for pleasure in high school, and so I'm making my high school teachers sound like they didn't help me at all, which is not the truth. The stuff I love writing about comes directly from high school. It comes from great teachers. I had Mr. Feig and Mrs. Oxter, and these great teachers who actually made me want to write episodes of television that kind of felt like a really fun class with your favorite teacher. I was sneaking a little bit of that in there too. At Syracuse, I can draw a straight line from sort of problem solving in my writing when it's not going well and figuring out a problem, understanding the parts of drama, understanding Aristotle's Poetics and things like that. Draw a straight line from things that I write to teachers that I had at Syracuse. So even though I went there to get a BFA in musical theater,
that's what I love. That's my favorite part.
Yeah, and for a playwright, I've taken a lot of ballet and music theory, and I know the lyrics to too many songs. I think it's taking the place of important information. Like, I don't know my sister's phone number anymore. I know too many Yip Harburg lyrics. But even though I went to Syracuse to get a BFA in musical theater, I came out a playwright, and it's because of what I learned there. And frankly, there's a lot in musicals that can be instructive. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but Jason knows what I'm talking about. Simply the fact that the second number in almost every musical is called the I Want song.
Yeah.
Okay. Clearly stating what it is the protagonist wants. And in a moment, we're going to find out what the obstacle is to that intention. But the second song is almost always going to be the I Want song. Tells us we've got to front up the I want in drama.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it sounds terrible to say we fall for it every time, but we do. We're right there every time when it happens. Like, we don't know the obstacle's coming, and then we're surprised. Like,
it's the amazing thing about audiences. Audiences are incredibly smart. It's the opposite of what Atticus says in To Kill a Mockingbird. My version of To Kill a Mockingbird, when he says a person is smart, people are dumb. People if they're an audience, they actually are smart. They don't know the rules of drama. They don't know the parts of drama. They know, and when something's gone wrong, they don't know necessarily what it is, but they sure know that it happened. Okay, they know that you, the storyteller, dropped the ball for a moment. They know that you're telling them something they already know. They know that you tried to crowbar in some clumsy exposition there that this character had no business saying. We just needed to know you had a gun. They know these things, but they will reward you if you do it right. If you do it well, they will bite down on the "I want" song, even though we know it's coming. They'll reward you that way.
Yeah, totally. Betsy Bishop, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for being here. So Sorkin, can we also maybe talk about you returning to the stage? Like, would you consider like doing it? Like, you gonna, a musical? Would you return to the stage?
Okay, so that night, that long night of the typewriter that I've mentioned, that was the night that I became a playwright. But it's not like in one night you're willing to give up the identity that you've had your whole life. I just thought of myself as an actor, even though I never acted professionally except for a couple of days here, a couple of days there on a soap opera. But I was an actor, and suddenly I wasn't going to be on anymore. So there was a period of maybe a year or so when it was this transition thing. And I was writing A Few Good Men, but I decided to put it down for a weekend because there are a number of, by the way, it never occurred to me when I was starting out writing, it never occurred to me to come to LA that they're competitive, but there are kind of entry-level jobs as writer's assistants, or you can write a spec script and use it as a writing sample. I watched as much television and as many movies as everyone else. I never thought of writing movies and television. I was just going to write plays. So I put down A Few Good Men for a weekend to write a one-act play because I wanted to enter enter into a contest for a one-act play festival.
Yeah.
New York has a number of very good one-act play festivals. They're very nicely produced. And I wrote a one-act, and it got in, and I cast myself in this play alongside Nathan Lane.
Yes.
Okay? Alongside Nathan Lane. And we were on stage, and Nathan was great, and I was enjoying myself, but I just remember looking at Nathan, watching him act in my play, and thinking, God, this guy is great. Wouldn't it be great if all the actors in my play were as good as Nathan? And that was the last time.
Talk about finding out something about yourself.
Yeah, the transition was over. I was a playwright.
At the St. Clement's Theater. Like, I did the research.
I know that.
Because I did research.
Okay. Yes, at the St. Clement's Theater. And again, incredibly lucky, it debuted on the same night as a new one-act play from Harvey Fierstein.
Wow.
And so the critics came out. And they liked what I had done. And so that got the attention of agents. And
we've had this conversation. Don't you love those like universe moments? Like, we love those where it's like dates line up, or you find out like this happened on a date for me, but it was like 20 years ago, some big theater history moment. I believe in that stuff. I just think it's like that's when the universe is saying you're right where you should be, like, on this journey.
In the lobby of our theater, the Schubert.
Yeah.
And I hope you don't mind that I still call it our theater.
Of course. I mean,
you have emeritus status.
Thank you.
In the lobby of the theater, there's a brass plaque. It's small, but it's beautiful, and it's just noting that this is the theater where a chorus line played for 15 years. And I am not over it. Jason, I'm just not. That same kid backstage at the Imperial, that same kid with the staircase going down at Man of La Mancha, the same kid who was way into the drama club, and the same kid for whom Broadway theaters are like cathedrals.
Yeah.
I am not over it. Being a part of it hasn't spoiled it for me. So the fact that we're at that theater walking that same stage is a very big deal to me.
It's amazing. And I want to get to our final educator, but one of the things that I loved about Mockingbird and what that whole experience did was the educational outreach, and that Scott would champion. I mean, we did like 5 student matinees with the original cast on Thursdays. And then you all went on and did the Madison Square Garden performance. That, I mean, just
the Madison Square Garden performance. And in case people don't know, we, with the cooperation of New York City, of Madison Square Garden, of the Board of Education, we did a special performance of To Kill a Mockingbird, entirely restaged in the round. We did it for 18,000 public school students, high school students in New York at Madison Square Garden. Built an entirely new stage and set where they were doing our show at night while during the day rehearsing this one in a giant warehouse. And I thought it was going to be a car crash. I thought it was going to be a dumpster fire, the whole thing. I didn't know how a play could work in Madison Square Garden. I didn't know how 18,000 high school kids who had been let out of school for the afternoon were going to respond once the lights went down. I just thought this was all going to be a very well-intentioned disaster. And it turned out that it was the most profound experience I've ever had in a theater, ever. First of all, I was dead wrong about the assumptions that I made about these teenagers when the lights went down. Many of these kids were seeing a play for the first time. Almost all of them hadn't read the book, hadn't seen the movie, so they were experiencing To Kill a Mockingbird for the first time. And Jason, listen, I love our audiences at the Schubert, but they tend to be affluent and white. This Madison Square Garden performance was the first time we were doing this play about racial tension in the Jim Crow South, but that is very much meant to be about today. It's the first time we were doing it for a diverse audience. And these kids were cheering and gasping and crying and laughing at the jokes. And by the way, they were hanging on Tom Robinson's hero's journey, on Tom's hero's journey. And I'm telling you, I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it.
I remember the very first one we did at the Schubert even, and it got to, hey, Mr. Cunningham. And Scout calls out Mr. Cunningham, recognizing the voice. And there was this, there was this shock. There was this 1,400 were like, what is he doing there? Like, knew who that man was that we had met like with 3 lines for a minute and heard about early on, an hour, 15 minutes earlier. And I remember sending a text at intermission to the producers saying like, this country might be okay. We may still find the hope with the children.
That's exactly how I feel. Like after every one of these matinees, after the Madison Square Garden thing, that we might be better off than we think. Let's accelerate these young people.
Right?
Yeah, can we give them their hunting licenses now?
Let's support one more educator who's in the trenches with these students. In Washington, it's Ben Stuart. Ben Stuart, come talk to us.
Hi there, Aaron.
Hi, Ben. How are you?
Oh, great. Thank you so much for doing this today and for all of your advocacy for education. That was an incredible story.
Oh, you bet. Until she retired, my mother taught 4th grade at a New York City public school.
Oh, wow.
And I remember coming home from Thanksgiving break one vacation, and my mom and I were in the kitchen, and I was just making conversation. I said, Mom, what are you doing with the kids right now? And she said, we're doing the Explorers. And I said, Magellan, Balboa. She said, sure, Magellan, Balboa, Columbus and his 4 ships. And I said, Mom, you mean 3 ships? And she said, no, Columbus and his 4 ships, the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa, and the Maria. And I said, God, Mom, it's the Santa Maria. But at that point, she'd been teaching 4th grade for 35 years already. So there are 35 years worth of 4th graders out there who think that Columbus came over on 4 ships. Some of them have to have become teachers themselves. So the toothpaste is out of the tube on Columbus and education.
Oh, that's great. So you have had an unprecedented string of hits as a storyteller, and our students all dream of finding such successes. My question for you is, the kids are often afraid of failure throughout the creative process, and I wonder what advice you might have for them with dealing with failure.
Sure. Okay, let me start off by telling them this, that until recently, the all-time home run champion of baseball was Babe Ruth, universally considered the greatest baseball player who's ever played the game. And as I said, until recently, he'd hit more home runs than anyone else. You know who struck out more than anyone else in the history of baseball? Babe Ruth. Okay, because he hit that many home runs because he tried so often. Michael Jordan, who we all just saw a great 10-part documentary about. If people haven't seen it, watch it. Even if you're not a sports fan, you'll love this. Michael Jordan holds pretty much every record in NBA history, including number of shots missed. Okay, this guy takes a lot of shots. You're right. As I said, I've been lucky, and I'm not shucksing it. There's been some skill and talent involved, but I've been lucky, and I have had a lot of success. But I've failed more than I've succeeded. And I think that anyone who is successful will have failed more than they've succeeded. The world, I would tell the kids that the world doesn't care how many times you fall down, as long as it's one fewer than the number of times you get back up again. And I don't like to fail. It's a very tough pill to swallow for me. Not the idea of failure, just writing badly, doing it bad. It's a tough pill for me to swallow. But I always learn more from those failures than I do from successes.
Yeah, it's true. Ben, Stuart, keep doing what you're doing in Washington with those students. We appreciate it. You guys are definitely in the trenches. Appreciate it. One quick question from the internet. With Newsroom, what came first for the scenes, the structure or the content?
You know, other television showrunners are very organized about the way they write scripts. They have to be. You have air dates to meet. It can't be you'll have it when you have it. So they sit down with the writing staff at the beginning of the season, and they spend time coming up with a season-long arc, and then they start breaking that arc down into sections, and they start breaking those sections down into episodes. And then there are outlines for the episodes that get corrected, and there are first drafts, second drafts. I've done 4 TV shows of mine have been nothing like that. I have to write a script, and it happens somehow with a lot of help from a writing staff that's pitching ideas, and we're kind of handballing stuff, and they're great consultants. But the answer to the question is it changes each time. Whatever gets you started for that thing is the thing that should do it. Sometimes, like with The West Wing, when I wouldn't, at the end of each episode, at the end of writing each episode, I'd feel good for about a half an hour before, like Sisyphus, I was just down at the bottom of the mountain again. All it meant was I haven't started the next episode. That's what being finished with the last one meant. I would go in my car and I'd drive around and listen to music, like the music I listened to in high school. For some reason, that gets me going. And sometimes I'd start with, this would be a great song to use as score for a scene. I'd like to write a scene that can be scored with this Dire Straits song, Brothers in Arms. And I did. And then in order to write that scene, I wrote the episode that came before it. And so sometimes you work totally backwards. But what I must have before I write a scene, it's not a matter of structure or anything like that. What I must have is the intention and the obstacle. Somebody wants something standing in their way of getting it. They disagree. They can disagree on the correct time of day. Just get them disagreeing about something. You'll have a scene going.
It's amazing. We're going to ask you back for a part 2, I think.
I hope so.
We're going to do a part 2.
Because I really missed you, Jason, and I've really enjoyed talking to everybody in your group. And I think you're doing a fantastic thing. Please keep this up.
Thank you, friend. The last question I'm going to leave you with, though, is is that the Oscar behind you? I just literally clocked it.
I don't have it here. I'm not
sure. I literally couldn't tell. I was like, I'm going to ask because I was like, is that?
It's I see what you're looking at.
It looks kind of like he's standing there, but
it's an award. But I have an office, and that's where the Oscar is.
I adore you, friend. Thank you so much. We'll have you again. Thanks for joining us.
From here in LA. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Aaron Sorkin. Amazing. Thank you for the questions. We will go back to him and try and get him back for a part 2. But thank you all so much for joining us. And I think we've seen in these artisan conversations, like educators out there, like you all are just killing it. And this journey, and take a risk and pick up a pen and write. Try something that you haven't done. If you're not trying something right now at this time, you are really missing out. If you don't want to try something, that's fine. But I think now is the time to take the risk and try something you've never done before. You've all heard me say, it's like, I don't know. As somebody who's so insecure, I look fear in the face sometimes on certain things. I'm like, okay, let's go. It's a no until you ask the question. So I think continue to do that. And I love hearing these stories and stuff. So thanks for joining us. I want to leave us, though, with one clip before we go away. And then I'll say, because I think it's a great clip from Sports Night. And it just, again, kind of puts it all together with the love of theater that he has and how he's written something again. And the whole idea that somebody could love theater as much as we all do. Take a look.
Two lived. Dana, what? I don't think you've lived. I don't think you've lived until you have seen this show.
You liked it?
Liked it? I don't know where to start.
That's wonderful.
I don't know where to start.
Why don't you organize your thoughts and get back to us?
The lights go out, and this woman with a voice like thunder, this woman, she summons all the animals of the jungle to appear and honor the birth of the new Lion King. She summons the animals with her voice, and do you know what happens next?
The animals appear?
The animals appear. I got goosebumps. It was exactly where I was meant to be at that moment. I gotta go tell everybody. Can I go tell everybody?
Go tell everybody.
Thank you, Isaac.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the tickets.
You're welcome.
Thank you for everything. Thank you for opening my eyes to possibilities that would have gone heretofore unexplored in a life that, while ultimately...
Go.
I mean, come on. I literally said today, like, I encapsulate her a lot of times when I'm talking to our executive producer, Matt Conover, where it's the 3 false exit thing. And then I come back with a new idea about how she describes what I'm assuming is Lion King, that she's just seen on Broadway. And I just love that we got to see another one who's just as passionate about this as we are. So I can't thank everybody enough for this show. Kyle Cole, Jeff Hall, Matt Conover, Lauren Lohman, the producing team that kind of put this together. We have so much material we didn't even use, so we're going to have to bring them back for a part 2 and a part 3. We didn't even get 2 more of your questions. If you haven't checked out Aaron Sorkin's masterclass, do check it out. It's really great. You can see more of him there. And if, again, like I say, Google these names. If you don't know some of these names that came up out there, you can get to these series and see some amazing performances in writing. As we say each and every week, in the end, kindness only matters. Thanks for joining us. We are back with Artist in Conversation in 2 weeks with Beth Level. Tony weekend with not a Tony's this year, but with a Tony winner for an amazing masterclass with her with some talented students. Tech Table's back next Saturday with a sound episode with Julie Farron and Cricket Myers, hosted by Casey Wilkerson. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Hey, it's Jason. If you like what you saw, take a second and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell and follow us on all social media. Thanks for watching.